Hello, and welcome to Third Eye Thinkers. I'm your host, Michelle Welch.
Hi, I'm your host, Megan Benanti.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous. And how are you, Michelle?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited about our guest.
Yes, today's really special, guys.
So we are so grateful to Carrie Paris for joining us today. And I really just wanted to start off with reading her bio to you guys because it's so interesting. It's actually a very interesting bio and very impressive, actually. So Carrie has a passion for divination and ancient ceremonial rites that invoke the spirit of divining communities. Carrie was in the first, I find this so impressive. Carrie was in the first class to receive a master's in the cultural study of cosmology and divination from the University of Kent in the UK. She's creator of, now there's a lot, you guys, because she does all kinds of things. So Carrie, if I leave any out, we'll add them later. The Magpie Oracle, the Lenormand Revolution deck, the Sirens, excuse me, Song Lenormand, and many more. Carrie considers herself a global citizen and enjoys dividing her life and teaching annually in California, Santa Fe, Europe, and of course in Dallas, Texas, right? Mm-hmm. And she, with her husband, actually, artist Rob Hampson, and the world's most psychic terrier, Roseshine. Carrie offers classes and divination services to global clientele, and this is impressive also, in the U.S., Asia, and in Europe. Her classes include a whole lot of classes, but there's a do-it-yourself oracle course, the Magpie Oracle course, mediumship and casting with Andrew McGregor, Lenormand classes. They go on because she's so creative. Thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I'm thrilled to be here. I love the show.
Yes. Well, we love having you on, and we have a very limited time, so I think we're just going to get right to it and ask you some questions. Mm-hmm. So obviously, from what I just read, you are quite educated in all things, let's say, psychic, just for lack of a better word. Okay, you're very educated in many areas. You can change that word if you want, and and quite impressive with your degree. I always said when I introduced her at Soultopia, I also just am very impressed by her integrity. So it's not just that she's so smart; she's just so creative and just you're a class act.
Right. I was like, it's the way she carries herself.
Class act. But what drew you to this? So what drew you to this career, though, Carrie?
Threw me into it. That's a great description for it. I've often said this, and people have heard me say this before, is that there's this great quote by the poet Rumi that says, "What you seek is seeking you," right? What you seek is seeking you. And I think a lot of us in this business of, intuition and creating things and artistry will recognize that, probably from a very early age in our lives, something has always been kind of pushing us towards this window of either creating or doing something intuitively or just working with people to help them surface answers that are already existing within themselves. So from a very early age, I was casting. I was playing with found objects and throwing them all over the place and putting them in circles of dirt and, talking about them as if they were telling a story. So again, I kind of was, I guess, born into this, thrown into it. It just kind of developed over time. I've been doing it all my life.
Wow.
It's interesting because I said what drew you into this, and what you heard, I think, was what threw you into this, which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
What casted me
What
in,
casted you in, whichever kind of casting that is, right?
Right,
One of the things that I think is an interesting topic for a lot of people, and I find a lot of people talking about this, whether they're in our business or not in our business, is how people combine business savvy with quote unquote spirituality. And I think you do that with such class and grace. Could you speak to that and how you feel about combining, again, I'm going to say quote unquote spirituality with business savvy?
Well, thank you, first of all. And it's a fine line, it's a tricky business that we're in. It's a sensitive business because we are dealing with, this very meaningful aspect of ourselves. So when you apply an income to that, you really have to be sensitive that you do add integrity in with the package, right? That your goal is not just to make a living, which is part of it, certainly, but also to make a product that's going to help people evolve in their lives. So as long as I keep my eye, and this is just speaking for myself because everybody does it differently, as long as I keep my eye on that particular prize, then, I feel supported. And my audience has proven that over and over again. They've been wonderful and seem to like what I'm doing. So I'm going to just keep on keeping on.
Well, yes, that's awesome.
Definitely. I mean, you definitely are successful and have quite staying power in this business, which some people don't. I mean, and you do have a staying power, which says a lot.
Yeah, thanks. I think staying power is really a matter of staying creative, and not going into that really stale territory where you're uninspired or you're doing the same thing over and over again. There has to be something creative, a creative element that people are going to want to use over and over again in order to, maintain your business.
Right. Well, speaking of that, and Megan, if you want to jump in, but if we love, and Megan and I were talking about how much we love not only your knowledge, but your creativity, how you use different, tools, divination. You spoke to Megan and Roger, I guess a group of us that we were at dinner about how it's always something fresh for you and how you're looking at all the older forms of divination and how can we make that new. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What is if you had to just say, think fast, what's my favorite? What's your favorite to use?
Casting.
Okay.
Yeah, always casting because it's so easy to use. First of all, it's so accessible and it's usually pretty accurate. People are less intimidated by it. Anybody can do it, and you can use anything in order to receive answers. So casting is pretty high on it's at the top of my stack right now, and that can change.
Yeah. That was pretty awesome when you came to town and you did that casting class. I was blown away at how simple it was and how fun and exciting. And I was like, oh my God, I have to add this into my regime because it's new and it's fresh. Yeah, no, I totally went with it. Now, I was curious. So you said you started casting even as a child. So, probably Barbie shoes and things like that.
Yes.
So about how old were you when you started to take this a little more seriously and then decided to actually create something with it?
Well, when I was 13, I've told this story before, and it's terrible, but I stole my first deck. And so I was kind of curious about divining. It was terrible. It's a terrible story. I don't advise it, but it just seems to be the way I got into the business. I was introduced in a weird and strange way to the cards. But before that, there was always some level of charms in my life. Like when I was growing up, my mother used to do these birthday cakes for my sister and brothers and I, where she would add coins or charms into our birthday cakes. And when you would slice it, the coin would indicate a message to you. And there's actually sets from the early, I think, 40s and 50s that are bake cake sets where you have a charm and it represents a message to whoever bites into it. Choking hazards, they don't do those anymore. Yeah. So from there, though, I've always kind of been exposed to people divining in front of me in these really obscure ways, like with rosary divination from the Italians and like cake divination and all these different forms that, eventually I kind of wised up, kind of had to hit me over the head a million times in order for me to say, oh, wait a minute, this is a way to divine. And it wasn't really until university that I kind of discovered that casting was one of the oldest forms of divination. And it kind of spreads out into just about every continent on the planet. So people have been doing it for a very long time.
Wow. That's pretty awesome. And I know that it's terrible that you stole a deck, but I also To me, that's so powerful as to the fact that you needed it that much.
Hmm.
And, when I think about the idea of stealing something, I always think that it's robbing our soul of something because we're stealing
Yes.
for something material. But in your case, I actually think that it was probably the opposite and something much deeper, but you didn't realize that at the moment because, theft is to fill something within ourselves that feels empty.
Mm.
But when we're looking at it from this standpoint, for you, it was a portal. It
Mm.
sounds
Hmm.
pretty awesome.
I
Yeah,
stole,
the impulse was pretty strong to take that deck.
yeah, I
Yeah.
stole balloons, and I'm not making balloon people, little balloon things. So I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to meditate on that. All
Thank
right.
goodness.
So you mentioned the classes and how many cultures can use that, or different countries and things like that. I know that you really enjoy going to China and doing some of your classes. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, not just China, but really everywhere. And I've been there a number of times now, and have found it to be one of the most fascinating cultures for divination. In fact, one of the stipulations for going over there, I think the second time, was to ask that I meet some of the older diviners from China so that I could get my palm read and my
Ooh.
astrology done and all of
Wow.
that. So, because, you know, that's that's a divining culture that has been going on forever, right? Think
Yes.
about the,
Right.
the yarrow sticks becoming the I Ching and
Yes.
astrology, and it's just so many great things. So, teaching over there was really wonderful in the fact that, the students were so receptive to learning and such fast learners
Mm.
too. So yeah, it's great to travel and teach. I mean, there's nothing like it.
Do you use a translator or do you speak Chinese?
No, I don't speak Chinese, and there's always an excellent interpreter there for sure.
Ah.
Oh, nice.
That,
That's
I
Yeah.
great.
wanted to ask you that before. I was wondering, man, if she can speak Chinese, I'm even more impressed. So, yeah, he was like, you just do it all. Tell us a little bit about some of your products that are already, we have some in the store. I'll mention like the Magpie Oracle. Could you speak to that a little bit and explain that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That again, thanks for having that in your store. That means a lot to me. It really does. As an independent producer, that means a lot. The Magpie Oracle started when the Lenormand rave went on. Everybody was learning and catching on to this new deck that came
Hmm.
out into the world, especially, well, not into the world, but in the US, it kind of
Right.
came on pretty strong. It was, really active about 5 years ago, I think it's been now.
Hmm.
And I produced a deck called the Lenormand Revolution with Roz Foster. Just love that deck. And one day I was sitting, I remember this so clearly, sitting on my living room floor, and somebody sent me a postcard with an anchor on it. I had the deck out, and there was an anchor card, and from the Lenormand system,
Right.
and then I had a charm bracelet on with an anchor charm.
Wow.
And it just kind of like, I said,
All tied
I
together.
wonder
Hmm.
if there's other charms that would match the other cards. And then everything kind of came together. So that's where the first Magpie Oracle came about, which was a casting system where you had these little metal charms that matched all of the symbols in the Lenormand deck, the 36 symbols. And after that took off, it was totally unexpected. I thought, I'll make like 100 of them and see what happens. And I think at this point, there's been over 10,000 out in the world now. There's just been amazing.
Whoa.
People love their charms. They love their charms.
That's awesome.
And
Yes.
so after that, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to create another casting kit that wasn't attached to an established system.
Hmm.
So that's where the Magpie Oracle Keepsake box came into the world. And so that's a system of random charms and dice and fun items that people can cast, and they don't have to have any knowledge of a set system or an
Right.
Oh,
esoteric
that's
system or
great.
lesson. Yeah,
Right.
so that came into the world. And then after that were tarot talismans, and then of course the mediumship and casting kits too that I'm doing with Andrew McGregor.
Yeah,
Right.
those are pretty awesome.
Yes, they
we each
are.
have that.
Thank
You know, and
Thank you.
I didn't bring my nice box, the cigar, the nice box, and it's at home. And I went to the store to grab everything, and I was like, where is it? My charming, you know.
Oh.
And so anyway, but those are fabulous too. So
Thank
tell
you.
us a little bit about and you say it so beautifully, your siren song, Lenormand.
Sounds beautiful to me when you say it.
She did really well. Yeah.
Yeah. The siren song Lenormand. Well, that deck had an interesting birth. All my products have really weird births, I think. I was at home with a fever on the sofa, and I was bored, and I was watching 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I was looking at some old vintage imagery and illustrations of, underwater creatures. And so I kind of had this fever dream of what it would be like to have these cards that kind of inhabited half human, half tentacle personalities and personas. And
Oh,
that's where the
wow.
siren song came about. And so that's how that
They're beautiful
They're
too.
really beautiful. And
Thank
for our
you.
listeners, this is definitely a deck to check out.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yes. All of her products. It's hard to
Oh, you guys.
decide. That's why I was like,
Yeah.
which do you like the best? And I'm going to confess something to you, Carrie.
I'm ready.
When I came back from New York, I bought a little bit of everything, up
Yeah.
on your table. And so then I just was like, I'm going to dump all the charms together. I know.
That's insane.
I know, I know. And I have them in a pretty bowl. And today I put
Yeah.
them in one of my boxes, and I was like, oh, I don't know. It's kind of like when you mix oracle cards and tarot
Yeah.
cards or tarot decks, and people are like, oh no, what are you doing? But I did. And so then when you came and taught the classes, Roger was like, because he took the class and he, which was really nice because he doesn't, it's usually me who goes in and gets to take the classes, and he really enjoyed it and really very
great.
much enjoyed the class. And he was like, you need to separate those charms back out.
I think it's okay.
I know.
It's okay to
just
blend
funny.
your
funny,
ideas.
He was like, I don't think you're doing that right. And I was like, I think she'd be okay with it.
Oh my gosh. You know who has the best collection of charms is Rana George. She has all of my charms and then some in a big bowl. She's totally mixed them together, and she does fantastic readings with those.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I say go for it.
So whatever happens, I'll tell you that when I used to go as a little girl, my grandfather was a preacher. And I would get really bored. I mean, I'm sorry for saying this, because apparently I would always be told, well, Jesus would speak all day, so you can listen to your grandfather for at least 4 hours. And I'm like, well, he's not Jesus, though. But so, it's like, I'm hungry and want to eat. So I would take my little treasure box with my charms. All my little ballet, it's interesting, my Barbie slippers,
Right,
the
yep.
little shoes, and who knows what else I had in there, something from I was an outdoorsy girl, so probably rocks and
Yeah.
limbs and pine cones and acorns and things, but all kinds of little charms.
Right.
And then other girls at the church started bringing the charms too. They're all our little goodies
Oh, wow.
in the treasure
Oh,
box.
that's great.
But then we got in trouble, so that kind of all got nixed. But
Wow.
it's interesting that you said you
Oh,
had
yeah.
all those charms growing up and your treasures.
Right.
Yeah, they
Your
really are
curios.
treasures. And
Yeah.
and look at you today. I mean,
Yep.
it kind of goes with that saying again, what you seek is seeking you. You were already doing it at such a young age, and here you are with your own store promoting charm casting and what are known as junk oracles. Marcia McCord, that's what she calls hers. She grew up in an antique shop, and she has literally a bag, like a huge garbage bag,
wow.
full
Oh,
of
wow.
all of these plastic charms, and it's her junk oracle, and it's fantastically accurate.
Wow.
Fun. Yes,
I bet.
yes. So tell us a little bit about some of the decks that you're working on now, or the projects that you're working on now.
Wow, so much. All right, yeah.
But do you want to
So,
start with your Kipper deck, maybe?
Sure, I would
Okay.
love to.
All right.
So, Tony Poole, who is our Kipper Queen and Lenormand Queen, also along with Rana, she contacted me and asked if I would be interested in creating a Kipper deck for her. And I wasn't really familiar with Kipper. It's a different form of divination, but has similarities, but not completely to Lenormand. And there's more people on the cards, to whereas Lenormand just has a single symbol. of an object usually. And, I said, well, sure, and I started creating something, and I said, well, why don't we make a siren song stepsister to the kipper,
Mm-hmm.
and, keep that theme going. And
Wow.
there's an image of it there,
They're
and,
beautiful.
really give these people, the people in the deck, these really interesting underwater kind of personas. So the deck is finished, and we're just now putting the finishing touches on the booklet that's going with it that Tony wrote and Tina Hart is editing so brilliantly.
Oh, great.
So yeah, that should be out in a few months.
And then you have your
Excellent.
relative tarot that's
Yeah,
coming
the
out.
Relative Tarot started as a birth and annual card deck and a court card deck, where if you were inclined to read the birth cards for people, which are those cards that you are able to calculate through the numbers in your birthday,
Mm-hmm.
that's how that deck was put together. So now, I'm making it into a full 78 card experience. And we have a private Facebook group where people are invited to come in and give definitions to the cards, because I want to build a community, a little white book around this, because it is the relative tarot. And
Yeah.
so I want the family and the tarot community to write for it if they're inclined.
That's awesome.
What's
Yeah,
that? What's that Facebook group? Called, or is it? Did you say Facebook group or?
Yeah, it's the little let me see, it's the Relative Tarot Little White Book Facebook group. So,
I
or
want to
you can
join
find
that.
me
Yeah.
on Facebook and I
Yeah.
can point you there.
Okay. Awesome.
I was just going to say we discussed birth cards in episode number 14
Oh,
and
good.
brought up your calculations on that as well, and the link to your website. So,
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. You guys are awesome.
yeah.
Can I hire you to be my agent?
Ah,
Really
sure.
remarkable, really.
Well, we just want to share the information that's out
Yeah,
there with
I
everyone in the
appreciate it.
world that
Yeah.
might be interested in it, because there's so much good stuff, and it is
Yeah.
hard if you're trying to make it in this world, or trying to find a spiritual outlet or connect with your third eye, and you're not sure what to do. That's why Michelle and I got going on this, is to help people
Yeah.
find that.
Well, it's a
So,
great hub. It really is. Thank you
yeah.
for doing that.
One of the things that was interesting, and these kind of questions tie a little bit together,
Hmm.
but one of all your products, maybe for someone who's doing that third eye thinking, that spiritual searching, whatever we want to define it as, somebody who's searching,
Mhm.
which product of yours, or which modality, I guess, would you suggest for someone just starting out? I would say the casting, but would you agree with that?
I do agree with that modality. Absolutely. It again, just because, and I would do the keepsake box because it's not, again, tied into
Hmm.
any established system. It really builds on intuition and it inspires dialogue, which is really how the answers surface from our sitters, right? We're just
Okay.
there to facilitate that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So anything that they can cast, is going to get people talking, and once you get people talking, that's when everything starts to flow and the answers start appearing and surfacing, and people walk away with an answer
Yeah.
or a solution.
What about for those more advanced? What would you suggest, maybe?
Well, it depends on their choice at that point. If somebody's quote unquote advanced, which is
I'm
a
just,
tricky word in our
yeah,
business, right?
Yeah.
um,
absolutely. I agree.
I would say, if they're advanced, in the cards, then, maybe do something that's going to help them evolve even more and get out of any kind of a stalemate that they might be in. Not saying that they all are,
Hmm.
and to cast some charms over their cards.
Because you said that, I believe that one of your professors said when you were
Mhm.
choosing an area of study, you knew a
Mhm.
lot already about the tarot, and
Mhm.
so you were pushed, your boundaries were pushed a little
Oh
bit.
yeah, yeah. I thought I was going in there just to, enhance my skills and the history and my knowledge of tarot. And they just kind of pointed out to me that I already had my foot pretty well grounded in that
Hmm.
modality. So why not do something that I was totally unfamiliar with?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I did, and I'm really glad they said that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today.
Well, and that's honestly good advice for anyone,
Yeah,
because we do want to stay in our comfort zone, and the best thing we can do
always.
to grow is to get out of that. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to take on some readings, or do you have
yeah,
any other
let's do
questions?
a couple readings, and then then we can kind of wrap it up after that. So, we pulled out the charms for today, and Michelle, do you want what we normally do is pull two charms and then and we pull a couple cards to go with them. And we have the people, our listeners, pick a charm that they want to work that they feel drawn to, and that'll have a message for you guys this week. And so we've got Carrie here as well, so she can also chime in with her intuition on it. So, Michelle, you want to pull out two of them from there?
Sure.
And I will shuffle.
There's one. That's going to be the first one. And that's going to be the second one.
Okay.
And Michelle, is this from your mixed deck or mixed charms?
No, this is
This
from
one's-
the Charming Dead Oracles. This is from mine.
Oh, great.
So I've kept it pure so far. So Michelle picked out the folding chair. And so we have a folding chair, which is kind of
Director's
like a
chair.
director's chair.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, a scarecrow.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we've got some interesting thoughts on that. And let's pull a couple cards here. So for the chair, we have Six of Cups in reverse.
And what deck are we reading with today?
This is the Living Divine.
Mm,
Oh
beautiful.
my gosh, no.
Churros.
Yeah, Churros deck.
Yeah, it looks like
Yeah.
churros. Yeah.
Legacy of the Divine. I'm sorry. Totally tongue-tied.
Legacy of the Divine, you guys. Megan should know the name of that because she is in it.
Yep.
She is the muse of the Queen of Cups
Yes.
in that deck.
Awesome.
So
Thank
yeah.
you. And I totally got tongue-tied. I'm sorry.
Call you out on that one.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Good friends.
okay. So for the chair, we have Six of Cups in reverse, and we have King of Wands in reverse. Do you read reversals, Carrie?
I do.
Okay. So if you can kind of visualize those in your mind, and anybody who has a thought, go ahead and dive in.
Don't all speak at once.
I know. The first thing I'm drawn to is the King of Wands in reverse on this, with the idea of the chair, which I now have it falling over, and so, and that kind of has its own meaning to me. That maybe there's some switching of the balance of power here, and somebody might be feeling a little bit of internal struggle with that, and that's also going to be tying into maybe some feelings from your childhood and what you experienced there. You expected to be the leader and somebody else got picked, or maybe you didn't win the race that you thought you were going to win. So there might be some feelings of growth that are happening for whoever picked the chair this week.
Carrie, do you have anything?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, if there's any kind of the way I picture reversals is usually there might be a little bit of a resistance to the upright meaning. So I would pose a question to the sitter, what is the resistance in this kingly, this royal position? And how can you redirect yourself by, placing yourself back up on or in the director's seat to realign with what it is that you're trying to master in the world of wands.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love that. Let's leave it there.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay, and then so for our scarecrow, we have Five of Swords, and then we have Seven of Coins in reverse. You want to start, Michelle?
Not really.
Okay.
It takes me a while to. I'm gonna
let me pose
hold
a
the
question to
scarecrow.
you, Michelle. Look at that scarecrow. What is the scarecrow? And these are the questions I like to ask people when they pull the charms. What is it literally? It's a scarecrow,
It's a
right?
scarecrow.
So, but what does it stand for? What's its purpose in the world?
Well, no, that's where I'm a little hung up. I think the scarecrow's out there to in a garden to scare off the crows or whatever's not supposed to be out there.
Yeah. So it's protecting its fields, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you pick the scarecrow and we're looking at Five of Swords, that also brings in that aspect of maybe stepping a little bit on someone's toes, or can be a little overbearing. So it might be either being scared off by someone, or maybe you're scaring someone off, and maybe there's a moment to step back. Work is feeling like, it might not be as productive right now, or things might not be finishing up right now. They're in process, but it's like you're pushing through. So try not to take it out on everybody else.
Yeah, I'm getting that somebody that you might want to be careful or think about. Again, a question to the querent: what territory are you trying to protect?
Oh, that's great.
And ask yourself, am I being a little too strong with this protection of my territory?
Right.
Yeah.
And what is
Excellent.
it, the fear underlying that, of why you're being so protective of your territory, potentially?
Perfect. Yeah. Where are your boundaries?
Right. Well, and I was also thinking too, when I think of a scarecrow, I can't help but go to the Wizard of Oz. And so I think of him as being really floppy, and maybe not stepping up quite as much as he should to take on a challenge, because there may be some self-doubt there, or maybe you're feeling someone intimidated by someone too. That could come up as well, looking at this.
In the Wizard of Oz, what was it that the scarecrow was seeking? The Tin Man was a heart.
The
lion was
brain.
courage, and it was a brain. It was a brain.
Right.
So yeah, it seems to me too that maybe to think somebody might be a little bit intimidated. I keep getting this: somebody is protecting their territory and might be a little bit intimidated by others, and that's the fear underneath it, that maybe I'm not smart enough, or I don't have this figured out.
Right.
Yeah.
So
What about you, Carrie?
Yeah, I kind of think that this is about somebody that's maybe it's time for them to re-examine their boundaries around what they do in the world and what they say in the world.
yeah, beautifully said.
That. And back to the director, just so you, just to tag along here, when that chair's fallen over, to me, I immediately looked at the chair, the director's chair, and then I changed it. I moved it to look to see what it was. But it seems like someone is longing for someone who may be a little bit. Just ask yourself: are you longing for somebody to take care of you, and maybe is it time for you to step into that role a little bit more?
Very nice. Yeah.
Maybe pull another charm that represents how they can do that.
Okay.
What's the action they can do that would help them achieve that? That's great.
Yeah. I got the gavel, the hammer, the judge's hammer.
Yeah.
So
So what it is literally is it is a gavel, and what it represents is, what does it represent?
justice.
Yeah, what does it represent to you, Carrie?
Law.
Yeah, and authority to me, because the judge uses that gavel to control their courtroom.
Right. That's the final. That's the ruling
Final
decision.
word.
So how would that tie in to how could the person help themselves? What action should they take?
To be decisive, I would think.
And set those boundaries, right?
Yeah. Back to the boundaries.
Yeah,
That really affirms the boundaries for me anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
I just love this, and I love how you teach it too, and you lead us through it, and that's what you do in your classes, which is so beautiful how you do that. Thank you so much for being on with us, Carrie.
Thank you so much
really,
for
really
having me.
appreciate
It's been
you.
fun.
Yes. So you guys, if you want to find out more information about Carrie, you can go to Carrie at carrieparis.com. And your website's carrieparis.com, right?
Correct. Yes.
And
Thanks.
so, and that's CarrieParis.com.
That's it.
So, and if you had one last final word of advice for our third eye thinkers to take away, what would you give us?
Oh, keep watching this show. There's always these nuggets of gold from the two of you.
Thank
That's awesome.
Everybody's
Thank
going to gain something. So you guys are doing a great job. Thank you for making our world look so professional too. I love what you guys are doing here. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome.
Likewise.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes. No. Well, thank you for all you do. So,
Yes.
I mean, it takes a village, and we are a village. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, what I like to call us is a divination.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love that. So, well, we want to thank everyone for listening today. please feel free to subscribe to our show. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on, what else are we on? iTunes.
Yes. And pretty much any major podcast platform, you can find
Yeah,
us
you
to
can
listen
find
to
us.
us.
So rate and review us and tell your friends about us and keep Third Eye thinking.